Hello, I'm Sarah Hayden. I'm here on Open Port Media Studios with two gentlemen from Lowell who have come to share a very interesting story about a film and a documentary project they're working on. The project is the Merrimack. Jonathan Stevens and Ray Sam Hom. Jonathan is the original person who started on this project, and it has a great story behind it. And Ray Sam has come on started as an intern, but now is a collaborative partner. Who actually has a background in film and even a little bit in community access as well. I think he mentioned he's still doing some community access, so yay, that's awesome. So where would you gentlemen like to start talking about the project, the Merrimack?
I was about to pass it off to you just in terms of like how it started.
Yeah, okay. So I inherited a manuscript, an unfinished manuscript from my great uncle about Lowell. He was a poet and a painter in Lowell in the 70s and the 80s, and my grandmother gave it to me. And I was watching The Fighter. Everybody knows The Fighter, about Lowell, about Mickey Ward. I was watching that, and I was working on a manuscript, trying to finish it up and complete it and put it out to the public. And the title of the manuscript was Possessed in Lowell. And I thought, man, that would be a cool name for a movie. And that's how it started. I just started from scratch, like, how could I make a movie? I had no idea how to make a movie.
So that there's a couple of other things that maybe people who are listening would want to know. You and I had a conversation, and I do think that's on our Port Media YouTube. So we talked about it before because I thought it was so fascinating that you had, I don't even know where I saw the information about the film, but that you had interviewed over, was it at that time 300? I mean, it's an amazing amount of
310 people.
It's unbelievable. I think I just thought, oh my God, who can do that? It's so much work, so much work, but I thought it was so interesting. And also this month, even though we run it during other times, not just April, but April's National Poetry Month, and because Jonathan's a poet, I just think that was very cool to try to combine those things. So I think the project sounds amazing, and I know you've done a lot of work on it, and you do have a trailer, which I've seen is very cool.
Under the smoldering summer black-topped roads, emerging from the long frozen winter of the urban valley, breaking through are the cobblestones, undying historic significance, the town, the city, Lowell.
The sky's the limit here, and people are not afraid to be creative, to work together, and to dream of doing things and making them come to a reality.
Lowell brings a lot of people together. It makes you see America for being that place of diversity.
Lowell is renowned for its diversity.
There's hundreds of type of people.
Multicultural and multinational.
All the different folks who call Lowell home, who come from all over the world, who have all different experiences.
All coexisting, all working together, living together, eating together.
You see all different cultures.
Spend 7 days in Lowell, you will have traveled around the world.
Everybody in the world is in Lowell.
The world is highly represented here.
The whole world is in the city of Lowell.
It's like a diamond in the rough. It's exciting that you're going to be sharing that.
You're going to show just how rich it is, how much it goes on.
Lowell is going to have a lot of parallels with a lot of places because of all the immigrant communities.
The American dream is right here in Lowell. It started here.
It's a marvelous story, and Lowell really is a microcosm of that great American immigrant experience.
That's Lowell. Lowell has always welcomed immigrant communities.
It's a living city. It's not just a city as a material. It has a spirit.
It grows and it changes, but that part that started is still there.
It was one of the most sought-after cities in the world.
It's the first industrial city in the country.
How much of an impact one city can have on the world.
Having the first urban national park, that's huge.
The Grand Canyon and the Statue of Liberty and Gettysburg Battlefield. Lowell is a place
that has that status in America.
There's something about this city, and there's a liveliness about it that you rarely get in like cities this size.
Highly inspiring place.
Yeah, it is. It's what inspired Kerouac.
The music, the art is really important for everybody.
Everybody can somehow connect to art and culture.
We got so many things here.
Very, very unique city.
There's no place like it.
I worked in Hollywood. This place is like a studio backlot.
People want the story of Lowell, not just a textbook version.
A collage of the whole city.
I need to support that young man in this vision.
It needs to be put on film. It's like a miracle.
It would be important for younger people to see this.
It's important for the state.
The more exposure and the more people that you can talk to that have visions and plans or have had success in the city of Lowell, I think is really important.
The film can promote that, reach out to the people and tell them exactly what the city has to offer. That'll be wonderful.
This is going to be huge.
A great thing for the city of Lowell.
It'll be recognized beyond the borders of Lowell.
It can inspire not just in America, but all over the world.
It can be a great tool for marketing.
It will be an asset for the city. Very beneficial for everybody.
It's really a good thing. Somebody had to do it, man.
They should be proud that you're doing something like this.
This film's going to help capture the best of the best, bottle it up, and then everyone can have a kind of shared story to tell through the film, and I think that will amplify a lot.
I'd like to see that.
I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to see it.
You are doing a community service that more people should be invested in.
This is something that I really want to be a part of. This is something that I want to put in as much as he's putting in, because you don't, meet somebody that can be as driven about, anything, honestly.
I couldn't think of a better city to make a movie in.
If you just capture Lowell, then you've got a great movie.
If you put something on film as a major motion picture, those places become destinations.
I'm really thankful that you're doing it.
I'm glad you're doing this.
You already know that you have an audience for this movie.
I would love to see it. I would pay to see it.
I'm in the Screen Actors Guild. You have my number. I want to be in this movie.
Thank you so much for doing this.
This is going to be a great success, looking at the past and the future of this city, and I look forward to seeing it.
So initially how I came on to work on the Merrimack and also Collage of the City, which is the documentary project.
That's right, Collage of the City.
Initially in 2015, I wanted to get a program on local access that was interviewing independent filmmakers and give them a platform to give them a chance to talk about themselves, but also showcase what projects they're working on, like a quick 1-minute preview, 5-minute preview, if anything.
Great idea.
And one of the things there is that I was just like, oh, let me start local researching who's doing films locally. So eventually I came across the Merrimack, and I'm like, oh, what a cool project. And then I see the face of the dude that's working on it, and it's Jonathan. And I'm like, oh, we go to the same church, but we never really knew each other in any capacity, really. It was kind of peace of Christ, go about our days. And
it was a big church?
Oh, pretty big. Yeah, it's good size. Shout out to Elliot. But from there, we reached out to each other, and we're just like, hey, I'm doing this thing on local access. Would you like to come in for an interview? And he's just like, I'm doing research for this film. Would you like to do an interview? So we essentially interviewed each other for both of our projects, and Jonathan was my first guest. And from there, because we knew each other before in that capacity, he was just like, oh, would you like to come and work on some shoots with me? Just kind of be my second person there, help me out with camera, things like that. And eventually that turned into an internship that we were able to do through my school. I went to Framingham State, and I've always known I wanted to get into TV, film making, writing, and all that kind of process, because that's been my background for 9 years at this point. And oftentimes when you're in college and you're told oh, you have to pick some type of internship if you're a senior or junior year, people tend to do either local access stuff like this. People also tend to go into some major news corporations, and things like that, but never really get onto sets or know what it's like to be an independent filmmaker. And because Jonathan and I have already been connecting on this level for so long, I was just like, hey, can we try to make this internship happen over the summer so that way I can work with Jonathan and be able to get some type of credit for it, right? So after that, Jonathan and I, and also the head of the comm department, he was always like, this is different, this is like what we need to do. So we got all the information together, like we made it very like college appropriate in terms of the language, sent it off to the registrar, and then he was just like, sure, go ahead and do that.
I actually remember Jonathan telling me when you first were starting, and it was around when either a little before you became an intern, around that time, he was, oh, I have some help, because I was like, how are you doing all this stuff? Oh, I have some help, and it's really great, and
well, the thing about the internship is I feel like as an independent person who started out not knowing nothing, I didn't know what I was doing. To get an internship from the university, it legitimized the project. You know what I mean? So that, to me, that goes a long way. That a university credited an intern to work on this project.
Well, it's an amazing project. I mean, I'm telling you, when I first read about it, I was like, my God, it's like this is a massive project. I mean, it was apparent that you may not have known what you were getting into because no one would go in ahead knowing that this is just so much work to do. Even people come here, they think, oh, I'm going to do this. They have some idea. And I'm like, why don't you start with like 2 minutes something, and then they, you know, sometimes they don't even come back after that. It's like, oh, forget
it's just like, oh, it's work here.
No, it doesn't just plop out onto the screen.
I think that people have to understand that I never intended to do a documentary. All those interviews were research so that I could get a lot of perspective of the city of Lowell, so that I could write the script for the feature film. But obviously, I'm not going to throw away 800 hours.
That's amazing. So when you, for getting the wider view of Lowell, did you take like their actual words do you use, or do you incorporate it into poetry in the film, or how are you using that?
Well, it's two separate things at this point. There's the feature film and there's the documentary. The interviews, how I am incorporating the interviews into the feature film is the knowledge that I'm getting about the people, about the history, about the culture, about the art. So the footage is not going to be included in the feature film. It's two separate things, but it's helping us to write the script.
Definitely. I feel like with each interview, because right now we're in the editing process of Collage of a City, so like taking all of those things together, I'm definitely getting like another thing on that too, just like going forward and being like, let's see beyond like the words, like what is like the essence of each person that we're trying to represent in the Merrimack. Like what are they wearing, what are they saying, what do they call certain things that are within this community that other communities might not know about. It's like those types of nuances that again, like you have like laid like a really good foundation for us to do the script, which is essentially has changed like since I came on, you know, and just kind of like that whole thing of being like, oh, like what things can we take from here, what things can we not do, and from here I feel like we have like a very good solid premise for what we're trying to extend for the Merrimack.
So you know, maybe just talk about some of the interviews that were gotten, because I mean I can say, oh, you know, you had this and this and this, but the background and the variety, the diversity was amazing. So maybe you can talk about the, you know, some of the interviews or the range.
Well, I'm going to defer to him for that simply because he is watching it now. I haven't seen it for a couple of years. He's watching it now.
So a lot of these interviews, I believe you said that we're taking around like 2015, 2016?
Exactly.
Yeah. So through that time, and just for like the few of like out of the 310 that we have here, I have interviewed people who are artists. I've interviewed people who run farms. I've like been looking at these interviews and like editing and like making notes and being like, how can I create the system so that way when it's time to actually tackle the project, how can we just make it as like quick as possible?
You're a real find.
You have to. You have to do it.
Gold.
You don't even know.
You know,
don't know.
And
oh, I know.
And part of the other thing there too is that just different races, different like identities and things like that, because again, like the
Different
questions that you're asking,
generations.
exactly, and the questions that you're asking are like, hey, like what is your background here, what is your background there, but also just like very similar things are being said in like each of those interviews.
You know what it reminds me of a little bit? It's sort of like an earlier organic version of Humans of New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like some really good like parallels there
Yeah,
for sure.
because the variety from a person that is living on the street to you know, a politician is huge,
Yeah.
and their perspective of the city and finding either the commonalities that people shared or the fact that they might have seen things so differently.
Yes.
That would be interesting too. Their view.
And that definitely comes up when people are talking about things that they like and dislike about the city. And again, like what you're saying, the things that the politician is saying might not necessarily be the same thing as somebody who is living on the streets is saying. And that's, again, like I credit that to John for approaching everybody and anybody.
That's unbelievable.
And just like the varieties and the background and things of these people, because it's like you get here and you're just watching this stuff and you're like, wow, I bet that they don't even ever think about like what the other person's problems or anything else with that. But we're all living within the same city.
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably like the other thing that's like super impressive about it. Just like just like that dynamic relationship that we all have within the city of Lowell and might not necessarily know each other. So I feel like that is definitely the thing within the interviews that makes it just like cool to like just
it's
observe
really
and go through.
interesting. I mean, did people say no to you?
Honestly, yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Some people said no, but a lot more people said yes.
It's just a lot. I mean, I know this is in the last interview we did, but how long did you take to do those interviews?
18 months.
Jesus.
So a year and a half. I was hustling.
I'd say.
I was
It's
hustling.
really.
Oh yeah.
There were days that I was doing 4 to 5 interviews per day
Oh my word.
in different areas of the city.
Oh, not only different areas, but just going through that footage again, like I'm like, oh wow, like you were really shooting in the summer and the winter, you know, and you were outside for some of these things.
Oh, yeah,
like
it was cold.
Yeah, like I feel like throughout the documentary, you're just gonna see different seasons change and things like that, and you're like, oh wow, like how long was this? You know.
So did people? Did you find that people were hearing about you doing the interviews and were interested in being interviewed?
Yeah. There was some of that, you know, like people contacted me.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I heard you doing this thing, I'd like to do that. And I was just like, all right, come on.
I think
Because I wasn't turning nobody away.
Yeah.
You know, if you got something to say, come on.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to have such a, you know, like that tapestry of your city at that time in its history, you know, because that's something other cities don't have. I mean, this Humans of New York or in New York, that project, very cool, saying like, wow, just little glimpses of all these different types of people, and it really makes you think like, wow, you walk by people all the time and you don't know anything,
Right.
you know, and to have this a glimpse like, wow, that's what they're thinking of or what they're experiencing. For me, I mean, I'm a compassionate person anyway. Can I be more compassionate? You know, yes, I feel even more, which, you know, is hard for me to even believe sometimes because, you know, but it gives me hope that maybe someone else might, you know, be touched by somebody's story and not just brush people aside so much, you know.
I mean, hopefully the documentary and the film can be used not only as entertainment, but, you know, social, you know, activism.
Yeah.
You know, that's...
And we were even talking earlier about, because like you shot it around like 3-4 years ago at this point, just about like the relevancy of what people are saying, because again, like people might have like a business one day and then a couple years by the time that the release of it, they might not necessarily have that business anymore. So what weight does that have? And it does have weight. It does have weight to like remember and being like, oh, what is happening within the city? Like what changes have been going on here? And it's kind of like that thing where like you write your name in a bathroom stall if you're a vandal, and but it's like an innate thing to be exactly. But it's like but beyond like the I was here. It's like it is going down to that. That's what it kind of comes down to.
Yeah.
Where people want to feel that they made an impression on the earth, whether that be within like a small community, whether that be the whole world.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Everybody wants to have some meaning in their life and have some thought that they might make an impact some way, somewhere. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I mean, I think of Newburyport being very cultural, not as diverse as Lowell by any means of shape, but we have different types of diversity in a way. But it's very artistic, and so there's a lot of artists here. But I would imagine, like in a really multicultural city, the art and it must be very vibrant. I mean, we were just talking about food before we got started here, and just that alone. I mean, Newburyport's expanding itself a little bit. It's good. But I would imagine that the art and the culture that you have to work with, or what you're sharing for just the interviews, but also the film, will be very interesting.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also just Lowell is such a historic place. Just the buildings, its own history, its own story, I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do with the documentary. We're going to split it up into history, culture, and art. 3 documentaries. So.
Yeah, no, I feel like just with both projects, a common thing that I find with it is that it has a very heavy emphasis on and responsibility about representation and the way that we go about making sure that everyone's story is authentic and that they will hold weight for the future or hold weight now, or like things like that of that kind of nature. It is like there's so many different types of people like living within the city, and like you were talking earlier how it's just like, oh, like Newburyport might not necessarily be as diverse, but like as Lowell, but like to get as diverse as Lowell is a high bar.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
like
it's really fascinating.
not every city's like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what makes this project so unique in that way.
How did it get like that, so diverse?
I feel like it's always just been an immigrant city in that way.
I think it's because because it is the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. People from all over the world came here for work.
Yeah.
And it just kept going like that. It's a gateway city.
Yeah.
And I feel like the immigrants that come there have to, and the ones that stay and establish themselves especially, have to have adversity. You know, like this, like I remember going on like history walks and just like hearing the fact that like there was like I even just forget the numbers because it was like so many languages being spoken in the downtown alone, you know, and just different sections and things like that. And like it's like one of those things too where like just historically, like not every place is like very like, oh yeah, like immigrants, sure, like let's take them on. Right. You know, like it's a thing where they do have to fight for their right. Yeah. And actually have to fight and make sure to like prove themselves and be like, we want to work just like everybody else. We want to love like everybody else. And again, we just want to live. Yeah. You know, we want to be able to have our community thrive here too because you were able to, and that's part of like that dream there. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting because they recently a woman, Jean Doyle, who was a teacher, she's about in her late 80s, has done a few, they're like documentaries, they're historical, one of those words, but her most recent one was on French Canadians, and then all the shoe industry and of the factories and all of that, and how people came down, and their intention was to go back, you know, off season or bring money back, but they liked it and they started to build a life here. And of course, before she had done the Irish and the Catholics and just all of the, in that way, just you know, in one group trying to push the other group down, and like this group, and then it's actually very interesting. But Newburyport stayed pretty small. I guess the river had some influence on that. We didn't have as much. I think it silted in or something like that, so it wasn't. It kept Newburyport small. But how are you funding this project? That is another.
Okay, so that's where we're at right now. I got a grant from the Lowell Cultural Council, from the Mass Cultural Council, through the Lowell Cultural Council. I think that was like 3 years ago. And since then, it's just been local businesses, local organizations, individuals, through a GoFundMe campaign, and now we're starting to take on corporate sponsors. We got the Gold Spinners, the baseball team, we got them, Dock Credit Union. We're just, it's just pushing, just reaching out, and people are supporting.
I know there's the website, themerrimackfilm.com.
Yeah.
So if people are interested and want to, see if they can do something to help or just see what the project is about, I just think it would be so fascinating for other places to replicate it. Although it's so hard. I mean, look how much time and effort and you have to have you two kind of people, which is hard to find.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I would like to complete this project and go somewhere else and do it. I'm thinking about the North End in Boston.
Yeah.
With the Italian history there, or wherever. I mean, I don't care where it is. I'll go wherever.
Well, that's an interesting, little addition here, because you hadn't mentioned that before, that you'd like to actually go onward.
Yeah.
I think that definitely would be great. It would be wonderful to have, if in any community to have that documentation. I mean, that's the way we feel about like Jean Doyle. Like that's unbelievable to have someone actually tell the story. And some people might feel like, oh, well, this may be not as accurate or that. It's her recollection based on what she has, her pictures. She has found people to do narration that are authentic. But again, I mean, it's it's what you have left with your memory and your vision and what you can find with notes and documentation. And we did have a lot of, I think Newburyport had the first photographers here, so we have tons of photographs in Newburyport. So there is a lot that we can share with each other in our community, but history gets lost if people don't talk about it.
Right.
So, I think it's great that we have things to look at things on our little phone, but we have to make the stuff to put on our little phones. So that's, I think, is a really important thing. I mean, I think it's been great having you guys, and I'm very excited about seeing that project. The interviews, I mean, the film is one thing, I think that's going to be great, but I love interviews, and to think about 310 and the variety is just really astonishing. It's really amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there anything else you want to add to this interview?
Support local independent movies and TV.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that is very important in this time, and more so. I mean, it's always been important, but now it's even more so because, you having also working in local access, we just need these places to have the voice.
Yes.
And I was just talking with Caleb. He had done an interview yesterday with me, and we were talking about local community television, and I had said, even though we don't have the shows that are, in languages, many different languages like Cambridge or Lowell, it's important that we have the meetings, that we can share how the money is being spent.
Yes.
And I think people may not be aware how on the edge we are, and how, just look at the newspaper industry, and then this is just one little thing that's left is community television, which is always like, oh, community television, whatever, but it's really important. So yeah, it is important to support that, as well as local filmmakers or your just independent filmmakers. Yeah, I think that's great.
If it wasn't for local access, I would not have had the access to the equipment or the education to film the footage for the 3 documentaries.
Yeah, I may have known that and forgot, and that's interesting to know that again, because that is what it's supposed to be about. And like you are like the story of local access, and you too, because you have stuck through local access, and you did an internship, but did you have involvement before you went to school? I mean, how did you get interested in film?
I think I don't know exactly what the moment was where I was just like, I want to be on TV, or I want to make TV, or anything else like that. Definitely from like a young age, that's just always how I wanted to go about that. And again, just being like a kid in Lowell with like no access to a car or anything like that. And I was just like, how can I get behind a camera or in front of a camera and things like that? And after they were like, LTC is in walking distance.
Two stories
you
about access television.
Yeah, and you just thrive from there. You get the lessons, and they're open to everybody in the community. And again, it's one of those other things too, where because local access is for the public will come to you. Will the public be some like interesting characters? For sure.
Yes.
For sure you'll have like some interesting programming and some interesting people coming up to you and being like, this is what I think. And I'm like, okay. But that's part of the city. You know, like you ingest that and you're like, okay, like I have a better perspective of what this is like.
Yeah, that's really good information. That I'm glad we touched base right now about the fact that.
And now you got 2 people with their own production company.
Yeah.
You know, like we started with local access for just a short period, and we got the information and the knowledge and the experience, and now we got our own thing.
Yeah, and doing important work. I think, you know, it's nice if you have the funding, and of course everybody wants to be paid what their value is. But some of these projects, they aren't appreciated yet for the value and their worth, but they're worth so much.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I'm grateful for you guys for doing this kind of project. I think it's so important, and to share with other people that might think, oh, hey, that's something that I can do. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and we will have you back. And if anyone wants to help, you can just check out the website, and we'll put it up on the screen too so they can have it.
Great.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.